好的，接下来呢，进入到我们今天论坛的最后一个多人对谈的环节，主题是沉浸技术如何来创造艺术空间。Okay, now let's into the panel discussion. How XR will revolutionize public art spaces. Okay, first let's welcome the moderator, Jesse Damiani, the CEO of Galatea, Forbes contributor. 首先，让我们有请在这一环节当中的主持人 Galatea 创始人、福布斯撰稿人 Jesse Damiani. And let's welcome Jenny Guo, the founder of Lumiere VR, and welcome Estella Tsai, creative director for AR and VR, and Vladimir Alik, creative director for AR and VR, and we also welcome Nancy Baker Cahill, the digital artist founder of Fourth Wall. Welcome. 来，掌声送给我们台上的各位分享嘉宾，谢谢他们。
We have made it to the very end, and I appreciate all of you being here. We have some really exceptional artists and thinkers here, kind of carrying some of the conversation from the last panel, actually. They're taking, obviously, a very different tack. Instead of looking at marketing, we're going to be looking at art and how the kind of convergence of XR and art are going to be revolutionizing our public spaces. And we're going to be looking kind of at the different ways, at the different things we mean when we say a public space. So before I get into that, I'd love for each of you to just briefly introduce yourself and give a little bit of sense of what your background on this topic is. Because obviously all of you have like lots to say, but specifically as it relates to Immersive.
Hi everyone, my name is Jenny. I'm co-founder of Lumiere VR. We run a company that's focused on location-based entertainment. This is my core business, but on the side, I'm actually a creative producer. I help to produce and curate a variety of projects and work with a variety of artists. Especially, I focus on the cross-border type of collaboration between East and West.
So cool. I'm Estella. I am a virtual reality painter, and actually I've done a few creative direction and art directions for VR films, and that's always very fun for me to create like the visual design and work with the story and make sure I figure out the look and feel for a completely new medium. That's always very fun for me to work with.
Thank you. My name is Vladimir Ilic. I'm a creative technologist based in Germany. I have a background in car design and industrial design, and I've designed almost everything. I've designed cars for Porsche, for Mercedes. I've designed stuff for IKEA and a couple other things. And a couple years ago, I had inflammation in my left brain hemisphere. I woke up 50% blind and was like, okay, I want to make something meaningful. And that's when I started to work with AR and VR and started to push things forward. Fast forward a couple of years, and now I help companies like Google, Microsoft, Facebook, Amazon, Mozilla, and AMD to push their products to the edge of what they're capable of and create awesome stuff on a daily basis. I'm very grateful.
Very hard acts to follow. I'm Nancy Baker Cahill. I'm a studio artist, what we call a fine artist, and I came to virtual reality at drawing and AR drawing very conceptually and naturally. It sprang up very organically, and I'm really interested in pushing the boundaries of drawing as a medium. And also I founded the Fourth Wall app, which is an augmented reality public art app that allows for both site-specific interventions and activations, and also allows the user to experience public art on their own terms in the context of their choosing.
Actually, a few of us have videos. Is it okay if we show that quickly? I'll move my head. So these are some of my pieces.
Some of my work, what is really important for me is like that I also work inside virtual reality. So everything you see is created inside virtual reality for virtual reality, also augmented reality.
So this is a very short trailer to our newest piece. It's called Living Distance. We actually just got out of the Sandbox New Frontier Lab. We were like the first ever Chinese project selected. It's a very ambitious piece. I work with the artist Liu Xin, which is she's an engineer and artist. So she built this beautiful robotic sculpture with her wisdom tooth. And we launched it last month with Blue Origin to space and came back. So that was a performance piece. Now we're making a multi-sensory experience from the wisdom tooth perspective, how that tooth is being given this wonderful opportunity to the space. So we're integrating technology, and it's going to be an installation. So we're going to talk about the public art space. We'll be kind of going in details later.
All right, I hope our physical selves can live up to the virtual presentations. So, kind of, Vlad, I want to pick up with you because you referenced in specific, obviously a lot of you here make work within VR, but you specifically referenced it. and a lot of your work, even when you're painting, is sculptural, and I'm sure that a lot of that comes from your design background. And so I'm wondering, when you're working with these brands, how is creating from within, or even outside of working with these brands, working for yourself, how is creating within VR giving you a different way to express yourself in the public space of 2D media, and on the internet and through any type of 2D output?
I believe like creating with your hands is like intrinsically human. So it's pretty abstract. Right now we're working on 2D screens for 3D mediums. So keeping the medium as natural as possible is key to creating the content itself. So we learn by doing, and so if you have hands-on contact with what we're creating, it's a pretty intimate process. So you can't go more hands-on with the piece or the content or the product from your client or from what you're working on for yourself, if you're not like hands-on interacting with it. And the amazing thing about VR is like no other medium allows us to go this intimate with what we're creating. It's really powerful.
So carrying that, Stella, you've worked with animators and across a bunch of different sort of commercial projects and indie sort of narrative projects. How is, similar question, but kind of tilting toward narrative? Like, how are you able to express, you know, an artistic impulse in the public space and kind of keeping things kind of pointing back to public spaces in narrative formats? Because I think that's one of the ways that you've really kind of pushed this medium forward.
Yeah, thank you. I think it is interesting because I do come from an animation, storytelling, narrative background, and then to bring it into kind of like going into more of like Nancy's fine art world, which to me I'm like, oh, I'm still new to this, but it's a really interesting challenge because storytelling is obviously still a part of it. It's kind of like turned in a different way. I did a project with Adobe last year for the Festival of the Impossible, where they asked me to create an interactive AR experience using Project Arrow, which was still very much so a prototype version. So I kind of like took the challenge of like, how do I tell a story about myself that's very important and true to me in the context of R&D storytelling in a fine art space, which was a lot of things to think about, but you know, luckily, kind of like glad I have like a lot of design background in various different mediums. So I think what's really important actually is to stay true to who you are and like what that story is that you're trying to tell, because that will come out in every single step of your design process. In every single part of how you tell that story, it will have that little piece of magic in each step. So I don't necessarily think about the commercialization or even like how this product will sell or anything of that sort. I truly just make stories from the heart and try my best to be authentic with every phase of that. Usually within the design constraint, but you know, like it's fun. It's fun in that way.
Yeah, they say constraint is the mother of all invention. I see that play out a lot in VR and AR, just because so often you're up against a budget or against a technical reality or whatever, and it really sort of shapes how you want to be sort of creative and innovative within those frameworks. You referenced the sort of fine art world, so kicking over to you, Nancy, you've been able to translate the fine art world into the public and actually let people engage with your work who maybe feel kind of kept out of the fine art world or sort of scared or intimidated by the fine art world. Can you share a little bit about your work with, in particular with the Desert X project, or the projects that are actually here on display if anybody has time to get over there for the final little bit, and what it was like kind of witnessing the way that people engaged with that project?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in access to art. I believe everyone should have access to art, and I believe deeply in the collaborative process and in trusting that when you engage other people's imagination, when you ask them, when you invite them into a conversation, a creative conversation, that what you're going to get in return is generally far more intriguing and complex and provocative than you'd ever imagined possible. And I was invited to participate in a public art biennial in the desert in the Coachella Valley in California. And the curators very generously told me to just pick a site. I chose two. I decided I really wanted to bookend this very complicated part of our state that has a lot of sacred land, is also using renewable energy resources. There was a lot of potential in the site, in the choice of site, to activate, to do an AR drawing that engaged the public through this app that I have. So basically the way it works, I don't want to get off track here, but I designed 2 AR drawings. First I draw them in VR, then we translate them into AR, and geolocated them in each site, and then invited the public to come in and experience those works using this free public art app of mine. And yeah, the response was just astonishing. People, I think the overwhelming reaction that I saw, apart from just the wildest diversity of ways that people chose to interact with it, was joy. There was a tremendous amount of joy, and not joy at sort of spectacle or the sort of the novelty of it, but really the kind of discourse and conversation it opened up about these 2 sites, one of which was the Salton Sea, which is an environmental disaster, and then the other was the wind farm. So I was really inviting the audience to consider, even more than site activation, idea activation, and create a kind of common thought space that we could all occupy, and then allow them to make it theirs and write themselves into the story. And so what they did is they would take pictures of themselves or their family members or with no one in the frame and share those things on social media, which became this kind of living public archive of the experience.
So I want to carry that social media trend in just 1 minute. I want to kind of close this loop of like from virtual all the way to physical in the traditional sense that we understand it. And Jenny, this is where your experience is really key. Both in terms of the project you just described, if you could give us a little more context for what that is and sort of what your goals were with it. But also you work with traditional artists and traditional galleries to try to help them see how VR and AR makes sense in what they're doing. And that's also a really valuable service because oftentimes we have to work from within systems to get people to acknowledge.
I think it's a really exciting time because I probably come from producing and distributor. So when I work with a variety of artists, I do think about distribution in terms of who are your audiences first. And you know, before I work at auction houses, so how we work the model is very old school. And even you work with contemporary art galleries, and you see all the artwork being exhibited only in the gallery, within the gallery. But in the past couple of years, you see like very much of type of immersive art start to be more engaging to the audiences. They reach a larger crowd, such as like Team Lab came to China, right? So tons of people, families, all that get to go. So I think being accessible to art is what technology right now can bring to the people. So for the art, I'll give you guys a very good example of the piece of Living Distance. So when we first start work on this piece, is a very large project in terms of you have rocket and all those perform very high concept. So originally it was started as a research project with MIT, then sort of turned into more artistic interpretation. And eventually, why we want to do VR? Because we want the piece to be a little bit more grounded. Because if you think about from the narrative sense, coming from the wisdom tools, everyone has it, but not everyone get to go to the space. Space is such a big idea, but when you think about tools, we all have that, right? And wisdom tools is like so meaningless. It's meant to be taken out one day, but giving this opportunity. So there's so many like narrative you could play with, and suddenly the piece, it doesn't feel very cold in a gallery. You feel like very human. So we really like that kind of approach, and thanks to Sandbox, we're able to like write down what we thought about Tooth and writing a letter to the Tooth's girlfriend. So we start to play with all these interesting characteristics that Tooth has. So I found like probably provide that kind of access for audiences to read. So for galleries, I think traditionally is like, you probably guys go to some of the galleries and you see this like all these work there and you don't know the artist, and it's kind of very distant. I think VR was immersive technology brings that kind of the humor, even the fun part of it, and even the spectacle of, oh wow, I never tried that. So I think to educate artists, especially the emerging ones, the younger ones, to make them, providing them technology, saying, hey, can you guys think about the ways, don't think about the tag, think about what you want to create. So creating a world is fundamentally every single artist wants to do. It's a form of expression. So, yeah.
I think it's so interesting, Jenny, what you're talking about in terms of like the humanity of the piece. I think, especially because we work in innovation, it's really easy for us to get stuck in the technologies. And even when we pitch ideas, people are like, well, what technology are you using? And is it innovation? Is it something new that we haven't seen? And it's something that I struggle a lot with because I'll say to them, like, this might not be the most advanced, newest technology, but we can tell a very, very incredible story that people can really identify with. And I think that's our responsibility as artists to kind of tell people and kind of teach our clients even, like, it doesn't need to be the most innovative thing. We could just use Vuforia to make it an incredible experience, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that's kind of going back to what I was talking about, like having your heart in it, putting your own personality into it. That will transpose into the piece as something that is relatable, that will provide connection with your audience.
So I always say to artists as a producer, focus on the storytelling, focus on what you want to say first, then think about the medium. Because you could use, let's say, right now 360 is not hot anymore, like for 360 videos. But if you really have a message, and we look at it as producers, like that's actually maybe the best medium for them. Maybe we'll take a look or even help, you know. But for artists, they should be really focused on the audiences and what type of message I'll deliver.
Exactly. Yeah.
I also believe that this strikes really the core of what we all try to achieve, is like putting the human into the center. Who are we all designing these things for? And in the end, it's all just humans looking at these things and experiencing all these amazing stories. And it's also intrinsically human to be like the center of our own reality, and the center of our own experience. So involving the person that is experiencing the piece of art or the art experience, like that's the key to creating something that's truly immersive and really resonates with the audience.
Is that why you're as Swedish as we are human?
Yeah, maybe.
Well, picking up on go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I fully agree. I think that having a sense of conceptual rigor from the beginning is essential, but these are just tools. This is just the means to the end, you know? And I have a collaborative project that I do with other artists, and it uses very clunky technology, geolocation and 2D AR artworks. But what we're trying, I know, so how passe? But what we're trying to do is really ask questions about, you know, when I engage the other artists, I say, choose a site that is meaningful to you, and then pair it with a work where it will have added resonance, where it wouldn't have the same kind of resonance in a gallery or in a traditional setting. And those are the kinds of things, like when Kristen was talking about impact, like that's what I'm really interested in engaging, like how can we measure that impact of those conversations that are, and using the world sort of as our canvas to explore ideas that are common to all of us, because, you know, yes, we all have wisdom teeth, we all have bodies, and we're all embodied, and so how we interact with those things is really interesting.
And one thing I found quite interesting is like lots of people talking about it's very expensive, right? Those type of medium we're not using. There are many filmmakers or even artists come to us be like how we get funding, all that. But lots of times you don't even need it. For instance, let's say VR, right? If you don't even have a VR headset and you want to do VR prototyping, you can do physical prototyping. You can literally move around the room and using your own body and to move down to see how the space is being changed. You can change your perspective. So there's so many ways to hack, but people were relying too much on the buzz. Like I need the best of five, right?
Yeah.
To do it. But I find it's like quite amazing when we really think about the very like the core to your piece, and is it authentic or honest enough? Then we think about what resources they have, right?
So dialing in a little bit, I wanted to pick up kind of, there's like little threads toward all of this. And in some ways I think it's like, in my head I think, oh, this should be an elephant in the room, but it's not, because VR and AR, what's so nice is that they're kind of collapsing things that we've called high art and things that we've called low art. And Vlad, you were talking about like putting the person, you know, foremost, and obviously the clearest way to do that is to literally put the person foremost with a filter. And I've seen that recently you've been doing that. Obviously in your video you have your, you know, flower beard. I'm a little disappointed we don't have physical flowers in there. But so this is sort of a question to all of you. What role does let's say social media in general, but I'm angling it right now on filters, be it for the face or filtering bodies around you. What role does that have in growing how AR in particular manifests what the public is and what a public space is?
I believe it's the currently. Let's start differently. We as creators also have the mission to educate people, not to put technology into their faces, but make it clear to them, hey, you can express yourself with this new technology. You can say something you otherwise couldn't tell about your personality, about who you are, or whatever you currently feel. And these filters are a super easy way to just go out there and express yourself. And this is for some, or just for most people, the first contact with augmented reality. So the education part there is it's brilliant, because the person associates itself with this technology and doesn't even think about it. And the technology becomes invisible, and still the message the person wants to convey is shared so easily at a click of a button, really. So that's really powerful.
Yeah, I think I think a lot of people don't realize that Instagram filters and Snapchat filters are AR. I think a lot of people who maybe aren't even into technology, but they're just using their phones on social media, I don't think they're aware of that.
It's good.
And that's what we were talking about. And the context of that is that everyone has a machine that is AR ready already. And so that's a major distribution platform, and I think that's very valid as a distribution platform, that we all have phones in our pockets. Those are all technically augmented reality machines. Kind of going back to how do we use that as artistic medium, and what is our responsibility towards that? It's interesting.
I would just add to that and say that, sometimes most people do have, it is right now the most democratic means of distribution, but one of the things that happened at Desert X that was really magical was that sometimes people didn't have AR-ready phones. They didn't even have phones in some cases, but somebody who was on site would. And so these kind of spontaneous communities would erupt around this experience, and people, complete strangers, would start interacting with each other, talking to each other, having conversations about what they were experiencing individually and what they thought about it. So in a way, I've sort of felt like as long as one person had access, many more could have access, and that the inverse of what we expect tech to do, which is to keep us sitting in our couches, on our butts, we get people out into the world and talking to each other, which I think is so crucial.
I really like that point, talking to each other. It's actually, we see this as a virtual space, but actually it does connect people. So I gave this talk a couple of days ago with government on we're born after the 90s or 80s, and in China it's an only child generation. So we don't have brothers and sisters. And it's such a lonely generation that we crave for bonding. So if you go to those commercial real estate property like malls, people don't go there shopping anymore because you can buy on just online. So why people go to those places is because they're connecting, right? So sharing memories and co-creating that kind of memories together. So even gallery, how they right now recreating what gallery even means, right? So Art Basel this year in Hong Kong was crowded with families because parents want to take their kids to go see Basel. Is it really about art? It's not. It's about creating that kind of bonding and family experience you get to see. So you see Lu Yang's very amazing installation with a bunch of kindergartners sitting there watching cartoons. But it's kind of nice and cute. You see that's kind of the change shifting from gallery playing this very cold, this high-end, only rich people can have access to it, to kind of right now it's become accessible. So TeamLab is a great example in terms you can interact with the walls, so tons of kids. So the next generation that the kids who were born in 2005 or even younger, they will be the ones consuming technology so naturally, it's organic for them. And for them, how to create that kind of social bonding, maybe it's through technology or some other form.
I think it's interesting what you're saying, how the museum art is changing in that way. It's actually becoming more like play, because it's interactive, which is completely different from how we grew up understanding gallery art. You don't touch it, you just stand afar, you look at it, and that's all you do. So
and those agents usually give you a look if you go in, and I think you're especially you go to Chelsea, and it's always very intimidating. Even auction house, right? We work at auction house, don't touch that box, please. You do all these things to keep people feel they're very distant from the art. But now, because of technology, everyone has a phone, like you guys said. So it becomes so accessible. People, and And it's also a debate what consider as art anymore. So many people don't really consider like Team Lab as art, as a fine art in the art field for critique-wise. So for VR-wise, you see so many pieces that the critique would be like, so VR as a medium, so traditionally the art world doesn't really show much respect towards it because they think it's a game engine. And gradually you see right now how HTC Vive or all these industry people, hardware people pushing it, museums are adopting it. You see Monet, right? You see some of the painting being converted, and you see Mariana doing the pieces, AQR, you see all these established ones start to using that. I think it does build that kind of infrastructure, but we need actually the good content coming out. Yeah.
That is also really key that the entire museum scene or also the curation scene and the critique scene, they're all like kind of old in their thinking, and they're slowly learning. So okay, people want to be part of the art. They want to be connected to the art. So the smart museums, the most successful ones you read about currently, they make the person the centerpiece. So the person stands in front of the art, and suddenly the piece is complete. The friend from the social part comes with the person, takes a photo and shares it, and shares the art from the museum to the friends and everyone else. Like, I want to do that too, and which leads to like this domino effect of people flocking to museums now just to be part of it. Like, good example, Team Labs. Like, everyone's seen those beautiful, colorful pictures. Like, I want to be there too, and you don't see tourists taking pictures of landmarks just by itself. No, they stand in front of it, so they want to be part of it.
I just want to add to that too. I think that a lot of people tend to think that the sharing the selfie thing is a super narcissistic project. In some cases it is, obviously. But I do think, I had a conversation with our friend who's a curator at LACMA, and she was talking about how she thinks the potential is in the, I was here, I experienced this. This was my experience. And again, writing themselves into that story and then sharing it. And that is what differentiates it from just your average selfie, that it is, it records a moment in time, it records a moment of interactivity and agency on the part of the person experiencing it.
I went to this Beijing exhibit last year, Jing Art, and it's funny seeing how they display their painting is for Instagrams. So even how they place their lighting and the painting, the position, you see it's quite off, but it's very good for phone photos. So even the galleries right now are learning how to do the marketing through social media. So I think gradually it's boundary. You have to, it's inevitable for gallery museum to start to be like, we need to think about it, right? So
I kind of want to speak to like what you're saying, Nancy, about the experience of being there. I get hired a lot to do performative art at events, and one of my big clients right now is the Netherlands, the embassy of Netherlands in San Francisco. They hired me to recreate the Rembrandt piece that you guys maybe saw, the Night Watch, which is not at all a small piece. So they'll ask me like, hey, like, do you mind coming to this event? And like, you can work on the Night Watch, and we're going to do it at this museum or at this large event. I'm like, yeah, that's cool with me. That's really fun. And I go and speak to people who are either royalty even, or even like really incredible ambassadors in politics, and just showing them what this technology is and how the art scene is playing a role in that way. And it's really incredible to be there for that moment. And I realized there is a lot of value in performative art in this space right now, in innovation, because of what we're just talking about, like the ability for people to say like, I was here when she did this in this space, and here's me taking a selfie with her in VR drawing this thing back there.
It's doubly performative, because you as the artist, we as the artist, when we're creating, as you say, we're sculpting in space, right?
Yeah.
That is a performance, that is trace. It's like dance. It's time. These are all decisions that are made in time and space. And then those things are it's like this refraction, because then it's shared. And again, then we have this sort of echo of that in someone else's experience of it. So it's sort of doubly embodied.
Last week I was in Finland, and we created a street AR art festival. And there were a lot of graffiti artists, and we worked together with the European Parliament to create that. And it was really a stamp, like a check mark in time, because we can go back now and replay what the artists were creating on those walls, what they were spraying there. We can play it back, like people go there with their entire families and see the artists again, like time travelers. Everyone is currently a time traveler. They can see the creation process of those pieces if they want to, just with the power of their smartphones. So
I found one thing really interesting. So right now I'm trying to collaborate with this immersive artist. He's a performer. So every time he has this amazing, it's almost like a cult party, like 12 hours straight, and invite all these really like amazing actors, but he can't really keep the work. So it's kind of interesting how technology, so his agent, I mean the gallery owner is like, oh, maybe you should work with him because he has this amazing performance, but we only have video footage. So in a sense, that how VR could potentially capture something to that kind of capture that kind of performance. Because I remember I was in Ethiopia, so I was documenting all the tribes, and I was just taking photography, 3D photos, and came back and looking into VR. It's like wow, like you feel you were there, and that kind of memory and the attachment is so strong compared to just traditional medium. So I found like tech-wise, it's like maybe it will even help to keep that kind of the essence of the art, like the traditional art.
Yeah, like kind of the capture of the moment. Like I think that's something we all just kind of touched upon. It's so interesting. So I was at E3 a few weeks ago, and Red Bull invited me to create a environment, a virtual reality environment. And going back to how technology doesn't need to be complex, I just used Tiltbrush. And we invited attendees of the conference to come into Tiltbrush, into the environment, and it's like a graffiti wall. So there's questions around the environment that say like, if you draw your favorite superhero, and people can just draw things in there. There are a lot of questions in there that have to do with diversity and inclusion. So if you were the voice of an online movement, what would your hashtag be? So people were so inspired and they wrote all these things, and it's very fascinating from like a art kind of perspective, because like it's a capture of a moment at a conference that you can't really replicate anywhere else, because you had to be there in that moment. You had to be in that mindset to step into this piece and write in it and collaborate in it, also seeing what everyone else wrote during the course of those 2 days. Something cool that happened is Khalid actually dropped by and he wrote something in there. So like that's
What
something
did he write?
He wrote Khalid was here. It was his very first VR drawing experience. But if you guys don't know, Khalid is a very, very, very famous American musician, very popular right now.
So you're literally you can go in there and type whatever you want to create, and you create a digital artwork and throw into her world. So it's like collectible all these unknown artists in a way to you become a piece. So it's like public art is like kind of in a way has that kind of sense of humor. It's not serious, but at the same time it has a very strong message in terms of saying to our current art system, which I think there's tons of problem with it. Yeah, so that was kind of self-aware. Yeah.
This is something that's also very intrinsically. This is why are we here? Basically, what we are here is like we're here to leave a mark, and what we can with these technologies, like we can say, I literally was here. It's like this is all we do every single day. It's like our goal in life is like just to leave a mark, to like once we're gone, it's like to leave something. I created art. Like if suddenly everyone wants to be an artist because they can leave a mark, and with the internet, everyone can leave a mark there. So
Speaking of leaving a mark, I want to make sure that the audience can leave a question-based mark with the rest of you. If there are none, then I'll just have you keep going because this is awesome. But I do want to open it up to all of you if you have questions for these wonderful artists.
Should I just yell? Yeah, I don't want to interrupt you guys because that was amazing. But I figured questions, there should be questions. And I've just been thinking, as now a lot of you guys traditional artists who have moved into VR, how much time do you go back from VR to non-VR? And how has created VR influenced your non-VR creative process and your non-VR works?
Oh, can I answer that one? Because that's been really, for me, I would say it's probably 50-50, but what's ended up happening is that it's this sort of chicken and egg cycle. So I've seen one influence the other in ways that I could never have anticipated, and working in VR and drawing in VR has actually changed the way I view the white void of the paper. So it literally, the way that I used to sort of tease out forms, mass, velocity has shifted entirely now that I'm working in this other way. And I think it's improved, not to place any value on it, but it's deepened and enriched the work, and now it's just in this sort of creative loop that I can't extricate or differentiate between them. They're just all part of a whole.
I believe the future will be like you won't distinguish between realities anymore because all AR, VR, all are equally valued. I like start in traditional work. I do a brush painting and record the process of painting it with brush on rice paper, for example. I'm experimenting with lately. Then I bring it onto my iPad and put an AR layer on top of it. Then I bring that piece into VR and add some more 3D geometry. So there's instead of looking VR, AR, and all the other realities as like separate things, no, they're like a interwoven thing. It's like they're working together. So like a carpet, like it's all one thing, but it's made of tiny fibers working together.
I think a lot of people ask us that question, and just to clarify, I think it's like the equivalent of asking like, do you like working in black and white or do you like working with color? It's like there's different uses for each tool, and there's different uses of each medium. And I agree with Nancy that it definitely informs each other, because like after I started doing a lot more VR painting, I actually can't sit still when I do 2D drawings. I have to move around a lot, which is really weird. I can't sit at my table to do this. So I actually have to like stand up and like kind of move my sketchbook around. It's interesting how that has changed, but that becomes more gestural. My work has become so much more gestural. I'm not tight and doing detail work. I'm not rendering anything. I'm just getting the message out. Going back to what you're saying, Jenny, it's interesting.
Yeah, I think we go back and forth, and we do learn so much from what's already there.
Yeah.
And I remember, so back then I was a poli-sci major, so I actually focused on prison resistance. That's my thesis. So I studied extensively on Foucault's panopticon. So if you think about that's nothing to do with VR, but somehow you just translate. And right now, like lately I've been like doing some work. I was like, oh, maybe I need to go back and read it again because that was like 6-7 years ago. So you always come back and forth, and you go to see theater, right? And VR just so connected with theater, and theater is the most probably the oldest form of the art. And you go see not just immersive theater, but even the regular ones, and even the musical, how even acting works, right? If you want to do live action film in VR. So I think all connected. And for artists, I think one good thing is like it's just a new medium. So you're able to put everything and tear it apart and put it back, and that's the fun part of the creative process.
You play with reality.
Yeah.
The fun part of it.
Yeah.
And on that note, please join me in thanking and applauding this amazing group of artists.
好的，再一次感谢我们的各位嘉宾给我们带来精彩的分享。Thank all our guest speakers to give us different and art spaces. Thank you. 好了，再一次感谢各位。那我们2019青岛国际 VR 影像周的 AR and MR 峰会到这里就结束了。再一次谢谢各位的参与，谢谢。